Hi everyone, it's Rob Watson, the module leader for TECH2503 Community Media Production, and this week what I want to do is give a kind of broad view of entitled it Urban Ecologies. I'm not sure the title is accurate, but it does look at some of the principles of the issues that are driving social change and social practices that give us our present arrangements and setup, that, you know, the kind of present level of social organisation, if you like. So what I'm going to do is draw on the work of Jim Ife in this, and the Lanham and Jordan book, which is Lanham and Jordan is the Sustainable Development book. Sorry, it's a chapter within the Stephen Moore book, the Pragmatic Sustainability book. And likewise with the Isaacs, Blundell, Foley and Ginsberg. Oh, that's a long list of people contributing to that. An edited book about social problems in the UK. So Isaacs and others. There's about 6 people have edited that book. It's far too long to reel off. Anyway, I don't keep these things in my head. That's why I write them down. So there's a kind of couple of issues that we need to think about. Kind of what are the foundational principles in terms of thinking about community development? What contribution can we make using media as a communications tool and as a tool to bring people together and as a tool for transformation that we can adapt and develop for our own situations and the purposes and the objectives that we've identified and that we are concerned with, and that recognise the local needs of people living in Leicester in 2017-18. So we'll look at the idea of kind of how different patterns of these foundational principles can be addressed, such as, you know, kind of what it means to be to define local participation, particularly as that's defined against the background of globalization. We'll also look at the idea of participation again in some detail. So thinking about kind of what it is that enables people to engage in participative practices and participative media, and what it is that people can develop, and what kind of point of view do we need to have of people in order to be able to recognise that they're able to participate. So we're thinking about people as being independent agents, not regarding them as sheep or dupes or, you know, information to be pushed around, kind of what we call an instrumental view of people. But also in terms of those relationships that people have aren't linear, it's not straightforward, is that people have a difference in expectations and kind of differences in power and differences in the way that they're organised, and what can we do to support a sense of self-organisation, and how do patterns of social arrangement that are sustainable, how do they emerge, how do they come about, what's the kind of process that drives their evolution, and what makes them kind of engage, you know, what allows people and gives people the opportunity to engage in those practices, rather than them just being kind of, you know, kind of locked out, or, you know, kind of waiting for their turn, if you like. So what we want to think about is what the knowledge is that people need to participate, what the kind of practices are that people need to be familiar with in order to be able to participate, and what the kind of, I think the good word is the dispositions, the approach that people have, the kind of readiness that people have, without saying you must do this. But we can say, well, actually, one of the things you've got to have is a general sense of, well, you can approach it in lots of different ways, but this is the way that we might develop this one in these circumstances. Other circumstances will call for a different arrangement of ideas and skills and capabilities. So we want to think about those practices in terms of how it, you know, enables a sustainable situation. You know, kind of how can we plan for sustainability if we're bringing about different, if we're utilising and bringing, you know, attention to different levels of social development. So on the one hand, you might start from, if you like, individuals feeling as if they're empowered, then you build on social relationships. So how is it that people form and maintain and sustain social relationships? How do they then develop those relationships so that they become wider ranging and more engaged with people other people outside of their existing network or community. And then how do we reflect on that? How do we ask questions about that in order to be able to make sense of it, improve it, develop it, value it, engage in different ways, use it in different circumstances and different situations. So I'm going to look at some ideas about the way the issues that we've looked at previously, covering social development issues in Leicester, poverty, the use of food banks, child poverty, kind of where Leicester is in terms of its other cities of a similar nature, and kind of where we sit with ideas about social mobility, the ability to climb up the ladder, if you like. Is that something that is people can do, or is it something that people are held back from? And one of the things I think is really important with this is to get a definition of what poverty is, and think about and look at how poverty is defined, because there's an awful lot of of things that we've talked about which relate to inequality, and the discussion of inequality is basically one of poverty, and poverty is a social concept. It's an arbitrary concept, but it uses information and has a sense of expectation about if you fall below a certain level of poverty, a level of income, a level of sustainable access to resources, social capital, financial capital, those kind of things, then it just makes your life, you can't play a part in society. And actually the argument is that it makes it worse for everybody else as well. So we want to challenge the idea that there's no such thing as society, but we want to look at the idea of kind of how people get trapped into the debate about welfare and social support. Changing the language seems to have been very pernicious and kind of nasty, and it's about blaming and punishing the poor. And we're seeing this coming through in the universal credit rollout, where people are made to feel as if they've done something wrong when they're trying to hold down a job, but they just can't make ends meet because they don't earn enough money because employers aren't paying them enough. Side effect of not empowering trade unions, perhaps independently from the state. So there's discussions to have about this and where this fits in with the this neoliberal agenda that we've talked about and seems everybody's talking about these days. So what's the role of community media in developing a view about poverty, about voice poverty, social poverty, financial poverty? The whole range of social marginalisation, where people are pushed to the side and that they can't express a view. And in the context of mainstream media, how this fits in with debate about the development of community media. Right, a lot to go through. There's a lot of notes, and they relate back to a lot of the reading. So it'd be good to do some of the reading, which is listed on the wiki in advance, but we'll run through them as kind of headlines each time. I'll try not to get bogged down in any kind of side issues, and we'll kind of work our way through what it means to be the kind of social practices that we live in today. Lost my train of thought. There we go. Too much talking. Okay, I'll see you at the lecture.